Jimbo, earlier, Layton talked about yesterday being one of the most competitive practices he's seen in a bit. Just how does spring and the competitiveness and the work that you put in now translate later to the fall?
Listen, you're either creating a good habit or a bad habit. You either like to play or you don't. You either like to compete or you don't. And every time you walk between the white lines, whether it's spring, whether it's fall, whether it's during a regular season, it shouldn't matter. It's all the same. You're playing football. And you want them to create good habits. And, from that standpoint, I think we're doing a good job.
Other questions out front, Travis?
Jim, I know in just within the state of Texas, they're looking at passing some different tweaks to the NIL law, maybe allowing the schools to be a little bit more involved. Is that something that you would like to see, being able to help some of the guys with NIL, or what changes would you like to see?
No, I mean, I don't know getting what changes, but I do think the schools being able to have a conversation with the kids about it is good, because I think a lot of guys don't always have the background, or they have been through the scenarios of what their rights are and what their rights aren't, and just what even contractually. Because sometimes you talk about getting into a NIL situation where they can get these kids' rights for a lifetime, not just while they're in here, when they hit pro ball, different things like that. So I think from an advisory standpoint, in that way, just having people to, whether our compliance or people look at contracts to make sure and let the kids know what they're actually doing or things of that nature. I mean, I think it's really good. I mean, because you're still talking about young kids, 17, 18 years old.
Second row on the right, Olin.
Jimbo, I know you're only halfway through, but how much progress are you seeing, or what kind of progress are you seeing from some of those guys who were freshmen last year that played?
A lot, and just from the standpoint of what to expect, more detail in their position work, teamwork, just understanding a grasp of the concepts in much greater detail, and understanding not just when you're young, a lot of times you understand what you do. Now you're understanding what the guys around you do, which in turn, the more experience you get in something, allows you to trigger keys to how your job is done, or about what's to happen, or adjustments you have to make, and things like that. So, I mean, from that standpoint, from a mental standpoint, there's nothing that can replace experience. Talent is wonderful, and you're very talented guys, but you have to have experience, and I think that's what you're starting to see from those guys in the second year or third year, from what you're doing and your schemes, and just awareness of the big picture more so than, as I say, you see things through a straw, or you can see things, everywhere, down and, drive with two eyes instead of one. And, without doubt, strength, size, speed, and also the knowledge. But see, you see, well, they're stronger, which is true, but when you know what to do better, you know what's coming, it allows you to play faster and allows you to play more physical. It's a mental and physical difference, which translates to the physical difference that you see as far as how they perform on the field.
Front right, Cole, and then we'll go back behind the lights.
Jimbo, kind of speaking of experience, with Max Wright being out, this is an opportunity for Donovan and for Donovan and for Jake to be able to step up, because they've already had experience in the system. But with now Coach Coley, what are you seeing for their progression?
Good, and Theo's doing a great job. The other Garza's doing a great job. They're all improving. I mean, they're all getting better. Yeah, remember, at the end of the year, that's who we were playing with, 18 and 19. We were playing with Donovan and Jake. That was the guys in the game in LSU. That were able to be playing. So, I think they're experienced, and they played the whole game. Things they're doing, Max being out, we know Max can do, and he needs the body for the rest and the things going future, and he's going to be a big part of what we do. But those guys are progressing. I think their knowledge of what's happening is getting better, and they're physically getting stronger.
And then there was a picture of Evan Stewart in a walking boot earlier this past week. What's his status?
Tweaked an ankle. He'll be fine day to day.
So just say it right now. Thank you.
Back to the back, right side, Justin.
Jimbo, on that point, what have you seen from the receiving corps so far through spring?
A lot of consistency. A lot of getting more physical, becoming better defined in routes, and, again, knowledge of how the adjustment is based off the coverage, whether you get man coverage, zone coverage, the things in that knowledge, and catching the football, being very competitive. And not just catching the ball, but also blocking schemes because, today's world, the perimeter screens and all that type of stuff. And when you get spread, when receivers are in the game and you're in the slot, you become the fullback or the tight end. You have to have a body to get on a body to be able to run and do those things. So I think they're doing a really good job, and the two young freshmen are doing a really nice job. They've come in with great intensity and great focus.
And I hope I asked this the right way. I know you say a dig's a dig and a post's a post, but when you're scheming up stuff with Bobby, sometimes, Coach, we see guys just smooth open. I know that might be a busted coverage on the defense.
A lot of it is.
I know. But do you go in?
If a guy's wide open, Bank on one thing. It can be unless you're in a man-to-man coverage and you beat him on a double move, it's usually a busted coverage.
Do you draw, I guess what the question is, do you draw plays looking to try to get a guy to bust a coverage?
Well, yeah. I mean, you put him in stress points. That's what the whole thing of when you're running routes is. Attacking the coverage, knowing his responsibility, and putting him at stress points. Where he is, whether it's two guys on a thing, or you're high-lowing a guy, or you're curl-flatting a guy, or whatever it may be. Is it a zone coverage? Is it a man coverage? Or if it's man, you're trying to double move him, or trying to get overs, or trying to get leverage by splits, by motion. I mean, that's what offensive football is. You're putting stress on. It's like the running game. I mean, you're running the numbers. You're running the leverage. Everything about football is leverage and numbers, and everything you do. So I mean, whether it's stress point in coverage, stress point in run, stress point in all that. I mean, that's what football is.
Second row on the left, Carter.
Yeah, how would you assess your running back room right now, and what would you like to see out of that competition this spring?
Just consistency. I mean, and being able to play all three phases of the game, whether you're in the running game and the passing game, whether it's catching the ball or protection, and the consistency to, I always say sometimes the best running backs aren't guys trying to be heroes. What I mean by that is take a 2-yard run, make a 4-yard run. Make a 4-yard run, a 6-yard run. The big plays will come, that every time when you're running the football, be able to drop a pad, run through an edge, and get on and be able to make vertical runs. I mean, in high school, a lot of times you get by going laterally. And if you do it, sometimes you do. But, there's times you got to drop your pads and go north-south and be able to take on blockers and be able to push that pile and do the things you got to, or just you're out in a space with a safety or a corner, being able to know when to drop your pads and play that. But then I think the consistency in pass pro, that you're trusted in pass protection, that we know if blitzes come or hots or your sights, and then the ability to get open in the passing game, which I think all three guys are. And our guys work very hard. I think they're three very talented guys that can be really good players, and I've liked their demeanor and attitude so far in camp.
With Ruben in particular, just being an early enrolled freshman, where does he stack up as an early enrolled freshman? How would you kind of compare him with how would you compare him with other guys you've had at that age, and just what will be the key for him to see?
I don't ever compare guys. I always say that because it's like comparing children. You don't ever compare your children. You know what I mean? They all have their strengths and weaknesses, but I think he is what I love about Ruben is, one, he's very gifted. But two, he has a great attitude, and he understands how to work. And that's what a lot of guys, when you first get to college, or the jumps from levels of ball, as I say, whatever it's high school to college, college to pro, from junior high to high school. I mean, whatever it is understanding that there's a lot more to it than when I just get the ball. And he is, whether it was the off-season program, whether it was lifting, whether it was running, he learned very well. He listened very well. He picks things up. He's a really intelligent young man, in my opinion. And he is, okay, I'm a talented guy. I'm a big-time recruit, but he works his tail off. I've been very happy with his intelligence and his ability to just go to work and strain and learn to give effort on every play and not rely on his talent. You know what I mean? And that's always a constant process in what you're doing, but I've been very pleased with his demeanor that way. Not just saying I'm a talented guy and I just rely on my talent.
And one more, we saw Cam, we all kind of saw him leave practice on Monday. Could you shed light on that situation where he kind of
He's
stands?
fine. He's back in practice yesterday, running with the ones yesterday. We rotating ones and twos and playing in there and doing great. Did a great job. Had a pretty good practice yesterday.
Second row on the right, Olin, and then will be Cease.
Hey, Jimbo, are you spending a significant more amount of time working with the defense now
At times.
than maybe you did it this time last year?
No, not really. I mean, we watch all the film together, offense and defense, so we're on the same page about what we're doing, why we're doing it, what's happening on that whole thing. We always have watched film collectively as a staff. I've always, whether it was on offense or it's a head coach, you put everybody in the same room to make sure we learn off each other, what they see off us, what we see off of them, and schemes that are going on and schematics that are going on. And you spend an amount of time in the offseason talking about what you want to do. So that from that standpoint, it's been very similar.
Left side, Cease.
I know coaches always review the fall and see how they want to change things, whatever. Do you do the same thing for spring practice? In other words, is this year's spring practice the same way you basically run other spring practices, what you want done? Or have you changed your spring practices over the years as a coach as well?
Well, and you're saying
Well,
things
just
like,
talk-
no, you were saying in the fall.
In the fall, coaches always review how they did in football season and say, well.
No, we
here's what
review
did.
that as soon as football season's over.
That's what
So
I'm
you
saying.
make the changes going into spring and things, new scheme. You present all those different things you do schematically or practice-wise or scheme-wise or rep-wise or whatever positioning or just technique-wise. You do no, that happens as soon as fall season's over. Those breakdowns, you're going into spring, and then you incorporate those into your summer workouts and the things that go on, and then you go into fall camp, and change. You don't always just change going into fall. You change now because that gives them a lot more time. And then you get to trial and error. I mean, that's a lot of, all right, we like that. Well, maybe that wasn't what I thought, or that is what I thought. And you keep things or get rid of things based off of that.
More this spring than other years, just about.
No, I mean, every year is the same like that. I mean, that's a big thing that goes on every year. That's not just because whether you win all your games, lose all your games, that process never changes. That is a very, very intense as far as focus of discipline of what the breakdowns were and what goes on and all those things. I don't know if you can put more emphasis on it than we've ever done it, if that makes any sense.
Front row left, Mark.
Kind of piggybacking on that, Jimbo, how different has this spring been for you with Bobby basically handling, the minute operations of the offense?
Not a lot different, but it's really in the last couple of years because what's changed everything right now, and you don't realize this, but I talk about NIL, it's recruiting rules. I mean, for instance, we have, whether it's 5 to 15 guys at every practice, recruits. And on the weekends, you're talking about 20, 40, 50 guys sometimes coming in. So the amount of time you're having to spend in recruiting in the last 2 years for head coaches is drastically changed everything. Because basically you understand something, from April 1st till June 24th or 5th, that's an official visit weekend every weekend. And the kids that are constantly coming through now and the transition of players coming to your campus, it used to be a lot. It's more now than it's ever been at any time in college football, in my opinion. So, I mean, from those time constraints as a head coach, it's been that. Now, Bobby's done a great job what we're doing, which he's done a tremendous job, and also knowing you got an experienced guy in the room when you're in there recruiting and doing things and decisions, and he can run. I mean, that's a big deal. You know what I mean? But he's doing a great job. But for head coaches in general right now, the time constraints in the last 2 to 3 years when all those official visits came available for juniors, and that's changed football as much as anything. For your time constraints. I mean, you understand, there's no weekends, both weekends, almost both days of every weekend, you're working year-round now, except for if it's a dead period. They're here.
Front row right, Cole, and then Ben, you'll wrap us up.
Jimbo, just given Bobby's experience with quarterbacks in years past and the variety of different quarterbacks he's worked with, have you noticed that maybe some things that he talks about with Connor are different than some things he talks about with Max to try and pull out the positives that you would see?
Well, yeah, you do. You coach every guy different. I mean, your scheme, and you'll call different plays for different players. And it depends on what his technique is. I mean, you do that for every player you ever coach. I mean, sometimes it's like Steve with the right guard and the left guard, or their tackle or the right, based off his skill set or how he has to get in the stance, how he has to take a step, how he has to shoot, how certain DBs can backpedal. You see, that's crazy. Some are better press guys, so you play them at press. I mean, from that standpoint, each guy is different that you coach.
Fourth row on the right, Ben.
Not sure how much it would necessarily be different from last year, but just curious with the quarterbacks and sort of their pre-snap checklists and kind of the things they go through, if y'all are placing more emphasis on certain things or certain things come up more often than maybe last year. And
it's always the same. You got to find the safeties, find your protection, find your mics, where you're sliding protection, what the run check is, depending on the call. It's very similar. Whatever the scheme is in which you have designed for that player, what you're trying to accomplish.
I got you. But you don't think so? You don't think tendencies in terms of something coming up more often hasn't?
And I don't understand what you mean tendencies and what.
I guess just like I don't know. We're running more pre-snap motion than normal, or just things that.
Well, yeah. If you run motions or pre-snaps and things like that, depends on what you get. And when you run motions, you got to understand what you're trying to get. You don't ever just run. When you run motion, there's a lot of indicators, and you want to know what you're getting before you run motion. If you can, but sometimes you do, sometimes you can't. You put it in the concepts of what you have. Experience, knowledge. As you get older, like I said, there's no substitute for experience. And the more time you get out there and you'll be able to process more information about what you have, just like you do in your job. I mean, are you the same as you were last year? Well, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what I'm saying. And I'm not being facetious about it, but I mean, it's the same thing. And then all of a sudden you get more comfortable, and then you're able to execute, and that makes you sometimes you say a guy gets faster. Well, sometimes he got smarter. When you get smarter, you get faster, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's not just mental allows you to be faster just like physical does. And I think that's hopefully and you play, because listen, I always say this, you hear me say it all the time, sports isn't if you can do it. It's how many times in a row you can do it without making a mistake. That's all sports is. It's not, I mean, there's a lot of guys can do things. Can you do it without making mistakes? Can you do it at the biggest moments of the time? And can you execute where time on the clock, down and distance doesn't faze you? You can still stay in that composure because you've created enough good habits of how you practice, and you trust your technique, and you trust the play, and you trust the teammate, and you trust everything around you that allows you to execute. I mean, it was the famous, I keep saying all the time, the famous quote that Michael Jordan made. They always ask him, why do you how do you change in the last 3 to 5 minutes of the game? What makes you so special? What do you do so different? How do you change? He said, I don't change. Everybody else does. Everybody else worries about winning. I worry about the play. And every day in practice for me, that's why I'm excited to hear Layden say that. I'm excited to hear we're giving good effort. We want execution. Because when pressure comes, your habits are coming straight to the surface. It's what you do on a daily basis. And the more mature you are, the more you understand that, and you create better habits when you practice. And what you're trying to get into. To answer a long story about answering your question.
All right, Coach, thanks for your time. We've got men's
Good.
golf
Thank
coming
you,
up.
gentlemen.